The unofficial start of NFL free agency is officially underway. Been underway for a couple hours now as we're filming this. So we've got some Broncos news and rumors coming out as players are beginning to sign with teams. So you can kind of cross them off your list of, oh, could the Broncos sign this guy? And here's who's left. So we're going to look at a couple targets that reportedly have some interest from the folks at Mile High. And then we'll look at the current best available free agents for the Denver Broncos. Now, it's a very fluid thing, NFL free agency. Things change any second, so just keep that in mind as we go through today's video. But I want to start things off by looking at this tweet from Jeremy Fowler, who tweeted out this: Russell Wilson isn't officially a Bronco yet, but he's doing his best to improve the roster by recruiting Bobby Wagner to play with him in Denver, per sources. Former teammates that played 10 years together in Seattle could reunite, though Wagner has an expensive market. So I've heard some back and forth on whether or not Bobby Wagner was an actual serious target/candidate to come to the Broncos. I saw some Seahawks fans saying that Russ and Bobby Wagner did not get along in Seattle. I'm not really sure. I didn't keep close tabs on them when they were together up in the Pacific Northwest. But if the Broncos can come away with Wagner, who, by the way, was a Pro Bowler the last 7 out of previous 9 seasons and an All-Pro not long ago, yeah, I'd be pretty excited about him coming over to Denver with Russell Wilson. Another good name to keep an eye on for that's got some interest is Chandler Jones. So we all would love to see Von Miller return. It looks like Von Miller wants to stay with the Rams under the right conditions, meaning they give him a nice contract and he doesn't have to move. But if the Rams say, you know what, Von, we think we got our one good half of a season out of you, we're not going to pay you the money you're looking for, then you'll come back to Denver. But if not, Chandler Jones is an interesting name to keep an eye on because he's quietly a very productive defensive end. His issue is he plays in the desert. Like, you don't think of defense when you think of the Cardinals, right? Certain franchises have identities that no matter what you'll think of. Chandler Jones and the Cardinals, they just don't think of phenomenal defenses. But what he's done the last couple seasons in Arizona, now he was hurt after the first game in 2020, but aside from that, he's been one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. He was the NFL sack leader not that long ago. He's still got plenty of, I think he's still got plenty of fuel left in the tank, and I think he'd be a very big signing for the Broncos to team up with Jonathan Cooper and Bradley Chubb. But I want you guys to get involved in the show early on. Do you want the Broncos to sign Chandler Jones? I'm not saying that if they sign Jones, there's no Von Miller, although I don't see a way they can afford to pay those two guys, so maybe I am saying it. Anyway, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Let's compare these two cats, though. Von Miller and Chandler Jones. So both players essentially missed the entire 2020 season with an injury. So we're just going to combine their 2019 and 2021 stats. And it's not that close. I hate to say it, but Chandler Jones has been a better player. So I guess you could take the bias out of it. But unfortunately, I think the reality is Jones, by the numbers, has been more productive than Von Miller, and that's a tough thing to say, a tough thing to grasp, but at the end of the day, that's just I'm showing you the stats. You can talk about what you want from those stats, but at the end of the day, for me, I think Chandler Jones would be a phenomenal signing for the Broncos if they don't get Von Miller, because there is a new regime in Denver, and they didn't draft Von Miller. Like, the only tie, really, I guess, was John Elway, but he's just a consultant at this point. You know, the new GM, the new head coach, the new staff, everything, no one's got the affinity for Von Miller like Broncos Country does. So I could see them going, you know what, we're going to think with our minds and not our hearts, and we're going to go with Chandler Jones if we have the opportunity to pick one or the other. But I want you to pick one now. Chandler Jones or Von Miller. Type 55 for Chandler Jones or 58 for Von Miller. Put their jersey numbers down below. Let me know who you would rather have. I'm going to see a ton of 58s. We love to do this on the show, and you guys always win this battle. So not much of a competition here, I think, but let me know who you'd rather have. Next up on the show, Mike Kliss, who's done a phenomenal job of covering the Broncos. He tweeted out something I thought was a little funny. Multiple teams showing interest in defensive end and outside linebacker Randy Gregory, including the Broncos. Gregory's agent, Peter Schaefer, a coach for Denver South High School lacrosse team. Whose side hustle is coaching high school lacrosse when you're an NFL agent? Like, does he miss meetings with Gregory? Because they got to work on running their offense through X behind the net. Former Laxbro here. But Randy Gregory last season for the Cowboys was one of his better years. You want to know why? Because he was actually on the field. That's been his biggest issue. Availability. Between injuries and off-the-field issues, Gregory has struggled staying on the pitch. So for that reason, I'm going to pass on Randy Gregory. If the Broncos swing and miss on Chandler Jones and Von Miller, and we've already seen other names like Reddick get signed, I guess you could look at Gregory if he wants to come here cheap. But I don't want to see a Christian Kirk kind of contract go to Randy Gregory, whose productivity doesn't match it. With that in mind, let's look at some top free agents remaining for Denver. You can all expose me in a way of if this name's already been signed by the time you're watching this, then, I don't know, skip 5 seconds and we'll move on to the next name. But before we get to that, I want you all, if you have not already, to please go ahead, subscribe. My goal by the end of free agency, at the end of the week, to get to 6,500 subscribers. We're a little over 200-ish. 195, 196, something like that, away. So go ahead, hit that big red button and subscribe if you have not already. Would greatly appreciate it. We'll also have that letter update coming at you soon. Don't worry, have not forgotten, but just a lot of moving pieces with free agency. So now for the top free agents at the edge position. Von Miller still on the board as of now. Chandler Jones, Zadarius Smith, who was cut by the Packers, is now a very big target for teams. Jadeveon Clowney has not made a decision yet. And Derek Barnett, who was a former first-round pick not too long ago, just hasn't lived up to first-round pick standards, but not a bad player by any means. And as for the offensive tackle spot, I think a very important position. You trade for Russell Wilson, you better protect Russell Wilson. Trent Brown had a great year at right tackle for the New England Patriots, but Terron Armstead is by far the best tackle in this class. The issue is he's had some injuries lately, and he's a left tackle. And you already have one in Garrett Bowles. Now, I'm not saying that neither of these players can switch to the right tackle spot, but you really want to experiment in Russell Wilson's first year in Denver with a first-time right tackle? It's a little dicey to me, if you ask me. Who do you want the Broncos to sign, though? What is it, 10 names right there? Maybe it's someone else not on the list we have seen so far. Let me know who you'd like to see the Broncos go out and get in free agency down below in the comments section, because they still got a couple needs to fill, right? Linebacker's another one, but at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to be big spenders. They have to pay Russell Wilson a huge contract extension, most likely soon. And they've already got a lot of big contracts on their books, and they still have some room, and they still have some great draft capital. They still got the Rams' second and third round pick. Now, those are the last picks in those two rounds, but still, they've got two early, day 2 picks. And they've still got some money to spend, believe it or not. After that big trade, they got a handful of contracts off their books, like Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant, and they don't have to pay a first-round draft pick anymore. The contract you'd have to give someone when you draft him 9th overall. But I think an extension for Russell Wilson is coming soon, and I'm guessing he's going to want the bag. He's going to want to make some serious money. So Denver likely is trying to fit that already into their puzzle of what their budget is for free agency. As for my top linebackers out there, how about Bobby Wagner, right? We talked about him right off the top of the show. Maybe you want to bring back Johnson or Jewell. Jewell probably a little cheaper, so maybe that's an easier fit. Anthony Walker had a pretty solid year, actually, for the Cleveland Browns this past season. Had some injuries early on, but all around was a pretty good linebacker for them, a good off-ball linebacker. And then my sleeper who I had, was it on Sunday? Jermaine Carter, just a good season for the Panthers, and they went out and lost Hassan Reddick in free agency, so maybe they want to bring some familiar faces back. I think what it'll probably end up looking at the linebacker position is Baron Browning plus a rookie. I think that's just the cheapest. And if they want to spend big money at the right tackle spot, or at the edge rusher position, like let's say they want to get Trent Brown and Chandler Jones. They probably can't afford those two guys, but maybe 1.5, right? Someone else. Well, you're not going to be able to swing the money most likely for Bobby Wagner. So you draft someone in the 3rd round like Baron Browning, who was pretty impactful in his rookie season, and you just put a Band-Aid on the middle linebacker spot because at the end of the day, the NFL doesn't value the linebacker position like it once did. Guys, one more last time, if you have not subscribed, please go ahead, hit that big red button, and subscribe. Join us here at the Broncos Breakdown, where we are getting you guys the latest Broncos free agency news and rumors. Appreciate all of you that watched this far in the video. You guys are the real ones, the OGs. And until the next time, go Broncos.